So we've added the functionality for changing the cameras and so on, for shooting the enemies and to handle basically things like that. And what I would like to do now is actually do the interactions, okay, and see how we can do this. First of all, I would like to go and well, we already use a collider for this one, for changing also the camera, which it should be somewhere around here, I guess. Yeah, it's the trigger. In this case, we could just use the same trigger or create a new one. Okay, depending on what you are actually looking to do, well, you can just use another trigger and stuff like that. I'm just going to use this box collider because why not? So here's the thing, we're going to go on to utilities. Actually, let's see, we have our camera hooks. Yeah, okay, let's now use the utilities. Let's create a new folder which we're going to call interactions. I'm going to create a new script which is going to be the interaction hook, and I'm guessing most of the cases that we're going to have interactions in a game like this, it's basically going to be yeah, it's going to be based off triggers and colliders. Okay, so let's go with that in mind, which means we're going to be using a few calls that are going to help us in our quest. So let's see, we already have the camera hook, which we basically can take these two methods and paste them in here, but as you can see, this does a call for the camera manager. We obviously don't want the camera manager, and on trigger exit, yeah, we actually don't have a need for actually no, for on trigger exit, yeah, we do have a need, but we don't have a need for this, I guess. Okay, so this is our interaction hook. Now, onto our interactions, we're going to need another script that is going to be interaction. This can be a mono behavior, but it can also be a scriptable object. Okay. And come to think of it, we need to think about how are we going to be handling the text and all those things. We can do them via, yeah, we could basically do them via, well, scriptable objects. One will be, that would be a way, or we can do them as components. The scriptable objects, the bad thing with scriptable objects is we will have to find and search all the time through all our project files until we find something to, you know, if there is a problems, if there is other things and stuff like that, then we will have to go with that. Now, the good thing about scriptable objects is that all behaviors are going to be plug and play. We will be able to use and do a lot more things than just keeping them as components. We can reuse a lot of the assets as the scriptable objects, I mean, but we won't be able to use, yeah, we're going to end up having a few issues. Well, on the other hand, if we are using components, then the components are also going to be, they're going to be easy to modify, but there might not be exactly what we need in our case. So if we are using a lot of things, for example, clicking something and interacting with something, it's going to be different than interacting with, well, you know. Well, anyway, let's do them as scriptable objects. Let's start as scriptable objects, and we're going to change them as needed, and maybe we can do a refactor if we're not happy with them. Okay, one important thing for anything creative you do is do not get too attached with your work, because you won't be able to do changes to them, and sometimes that can be a roadblock. So we have, okay, let's start with our interactions. Basically, because our interaction is going to be like this, we're going to have an interaction over here, which we can drag and drop through the inspector. Now, on the player states, we can have another state, or well, another reference, in this case, which can be a public interaction, current interaction. On the interactions then themselves, we can use a public string for interaction description or just description. We can also use, well, we do need to do an execute. Oops, abstract void execute. And well, we can pass also the player state manager because, well, it's going to be the player that is going to be initiating this. Okay, so let's start with this. And let's create, however, a method that is going to be updating a few things as well, since we are adding the current interaction and so on. So I'm not going to use this as a public variable. I'm going to use this as a serialized field, so we can also see it in the inspector, just for debugging, but in reality we won't really have a need for this. So I'm going to do a public void load interaction, and I'm going to be passing the hook as well, interaction hook. Okay, then we will want to update a few things. For example, we would like to update on the UI an object that says, you can interact with this. I'm not going to keep it like this. I'm only doing this for test purposes. Okay, I would like to have decoupled the UI from the main scripts and basically the player controller and so forth. So just keep that in mind. We're going to change a few things in the future. So I'm just going to say interaction button and so on. Okay, and we can also do a bool for having an interaction. Public bool has interaction. So load interaction has interaction will be true. Interaction or current interaction will be the interaction hook dot interaction, and actually, you know what? Let's say interaction hook. Let's store it as an interaction hook instead of just the interaction, because we can keep a lot of more data on the interaction hook as well as the interaction. Okay, so interaction hook, and we can also say interaction button set active and set it to true. We can also do a public void unload interaction. Unload interaction doesn't really matter. And we can do interaction button set active, set that to false, has interaction false, and current interaction hook equals false, equals null actually. Okay, so on the interaction hook, player states dot load interaction, load this, player states unload interaction for on trigger enter and on trigger exit. Now, because we have this, we used the hook essentially. We don't actually need to create a scriptable object, so we don't need to create an interaction just yet. We can work with what we already have. So I'm simply going to go on the trigger and say interaction hook. Okay, let's add something on the UI that says, you can interact with this. Let's switch this to D. So over here we can do, interact. Obviously we're going to tailor that much later. I'm just going to close this now and player state manager. I'm just going to drag and drop this on the interaction button. Hit play. And once we go close to that trigger, once we trigger it, that is, okay, we can see the interact. Perfect. Now let's go and create the state that handles the rest. So, wrong project. Here we are. So, okay, we have our interactions and our interactions hook and so on and so on. Now, let's go on to our inputs and basically we can either do inputs or player movement, I guess. We can't see, shouldn't matter. Okay, so let's go onto the state manager and add, is it the state? No, the player state manager, and add one more bool for is interacting. Okay, this is different than actually no, you know what? Let's just not do that. Let's just go and create a new state. So we are already here and we're going to create a new state for the interactions. So state interacting, new state, new list, state action. Okay, let's add the input manager in as well. And I think those two should do. The input manager should do because I would like to use from the same button that we're using for the input manager, for example, the is firing or is aiming, to just change text on the screen. Okay, so for now we're just going to use the input manager. Then we can go on to, maybe not on the input manager, let's do this on the player movement, I guess. Although maybe that's too complicated. So no, instead of using this on the player movement, let's go and create a new action, which is going to be called handle interactions. Actually, detect interactions. Okay, add that, add the namespace. This is going to be a state action. We can delete this stuff. Quick action, implement the abstract class. Okay, then this one is going to definitely need a state manager. So public detect interactions, player state manager, states, player state manager, states, this states equals states. And when executing this, return, actually, bool, we have a return value, and so forth. So, if states dot is aiming is firing, so we need an actual, we do need an input. Public bool is interacting. So if states dot has interaction and if states dot is interacting, change the state and return value is going to be set to true. The target state we would like to go will be state dot, or do we use the state or do we use the strings? What do we use? The player state manager, let's see. Okay. Yeah, we're using the IDs, but we could just have used the states themselves. Anyway, locomotion ID, aiming ID, interactions ID. Okay, then back to this. Interactions state. String interactions state. And then interaction state equals interactions state. Interaction state. Yeah, okay. Let's rename this to interaction ID. And for this, we're just going to say state, change state, or set state to interactions state. And this is going to handle the rest. So let's add this onto our main state. So basically when we can interact, it's on the locomotion. I'm going to add it before player movement because player movement is going to be skipped after our inputs. So if we want to detect that is, so I'm going to say new detect interactions, pass this and interactions ID. Okay, and there we go. We now have a layering system. So we also need to register the interacting, of course, which means interacting and interacting and then interaction ID, interactions ID. Yeah, okay. Actually, on the interaction themselves, I'm going to use on the abstract void, I'm going to pass the player state manager, but I'm also going to pass the interaction hook itself, because I think we could save a lot of things. I think we also don't need to have the description onto this one. Yeah, we're not going to have the description onto this one. And you will see what we're going to do with this. So player state manager, not player state manager, let's create a new action which is going to be the handle interactions. Like this. Okay. Then false, and actually let's just do bool return value, false, return value. So, okay, now we do need the player state manager, which means we're also going to create a constructor for this. Okay, and we will basically be doing if states.has interaction, if states.interaction yeah, we actually need to access the interaction, the current interaction. So onto the player state manager then, we need a method get interaction hook and then get return this. Okay, so interaction hook states get interaction hook, then hook dot yeah, it's not a method. And come to think of it, we can do inside inside the interaction hook, we can just do a public void execute interaction, pass a float for the delta, although yeah, I think we're not going to need that anyway. So interaction, let's do first if interaction not equals null, do an execute. We do need the player state manager, so we can just pass this as well from here. And execute states and pass this hook. Okay, awesome. So back to this hook dot execute interaction and pass the states. You do need to pass also the delta, so I think if we do states.delta time, we should be good. Awesome. So we're now in here and we need to implement the type of interactions, the type of interaction we actually want. So let's do an interaction and let's say, I don't know, look, or I think it's just, we can say, just say look interaction. Okay. This now is going to be an interaction. You can delete this. We have to implement the abstract class, and because it's a scriptable object, menu name, interactions, look interaction. So basically, if player dot is aiming or player dot is firing or basically clicking anything, then we're going to be going through a list of strings inside our hook. Okay, so public string, description, or yeah, okay, let's say description hook, descriptions. Okay, we do need we can store, well, we need an index for this. We could either store this here or we can change states if you are clicking on something. Okay, let's not complicate things. We're going to do that later. So we're going to create an index. It's fine. Let me think. Yeah, we kind of need to know that this interaction is this. So let's just store this inside the interaction or the interaction hook. So public integer hook or index, or better yet, description index. Okay. So look at direction. Now we kind of need a reference to a text object. So I'm going to be really dirty again with this and just have a hard-coded reference for this one. So I'm just going to do public text, description text. Okay, we're going to fix this later. I'm not really worried that much about these things right now. So player dot is player dot description text dot text equals hook dot descriptions hook dot descriptions index. Okay, if player dot is not if hook description index plus plus, if hook dot description index is greater than the hook dot descriptions dot length minus 1, hook dot description index equals 0, and here we can end the case. We can have a callback or something else, whatever we want to do over here. So I'm going to go on my player states, and I'm going to create a method for saying public void back or set state to Locomotion. Okay, because Locomotion is basically our starting state, we basically want to just do a change or set state. We need an easy way to change back to the normal behavior for our guy. Set state Locomotion ID. Now we can do a lot more things with our interaction hook. For example, public bool is one shot. Inside our look interaction, we can also say if hook dot is one shot, then hook dot enabled equals false, and we can close that. Okay. Similarly, we can do other things. For example, you can load another description index or whatever. So for now, we're just going to worry about this one. Back to the player state manager then. We want the input manager as we said here. Okay, because we want to be updating our inputs. And we also want to update to have a new handle interactions and handle interactions, and then go back to handle interactions and pass this. Awesome. Now back to handle or to look interactions, we forgot one thing. We need to do a return here, and we also need to be saying player dot description text dot game object set active, set this to true. Okay, this is pretty dirty as you see, and down here we want to close this as set active to false. Okay, so we're not updating these two. So we're actually leaving this state, and we can do this via player dot change or set state to Locomotion. Okay, and minimize this, close that, and then let's go and add something, some lines basically. Oh, also we forgot that we do need to have an interaction. So on our input manager, we also need to update the player states dot is interacting. Okay, right now I'm just going to say input dot get key down key code dot x and nothing else. Okay, so minimize that. Let's compile. So up to the interaction into our trigger, I can add some lines here. Okay, so we can do line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4. Then, actually, I think it should be fine. Let's try this now. Interact. We forgot one thing. We haven't assigned on the player state manager, we haven't not assigned the description text. So right now I'm just going to get the interact, and we actually forgot. Yeah, we did forgot a few other things as well. So let's get out of play mode. Let's go here and create a folder for interactions. Create the interaction, look interaction. Okay. On the player state manager then, let's drag and drop the description text, which is going to be this. On the canvas, that is. Okay, let's drop that, and okay, and then on the interaction hook itself, let's assign the look interaction. Hit play. And then when going in close, we can press X. Yeah, we didn't do X. We did it with the fire, so it went through all of them. So back to survival horror then, and you can see because we have get button, we had some issues. So let's do this as get button down and get button down. Then on the look on the handle interactions. Actually, no, inside the look interaction, I'm going to say or player dot is interacting. So we can use the same keys for all of this. Minimize that. And let's go over there. Okay, line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, and exit. If I now go out of this and go back again onto the trigger, it's not on line 4, it's because we are using the same text object to say interact and update the description text. So that's why we're seeing the line 4 here. It doesn't matter in this case because we're going to be updating this, so we can see them as here. Now, one more thing, however, let's try again the one shot. So I'm going to say is one shot, and I'm going to go close to that object. Okay, then I'm going to interact, and it should now be disabled, but as you can see, because it doesn't actually have anything from it doesn't have start or update. Yeah, it actually didn't get disabled. Okay, so let's see why that didn't work. Yeah, it didn't work because it cannot be disabled since it's not a mono behavior, which is actually kind of stupid, to be honest, from Unity side to do this. So yeah, it's going to be silly. But let's add a start method here, and we're going to get the tick because we're using a mono behavior method. So if I untick this and go onto our trigger collider, and it doesn't give us the interact text. Yeah, it does. So on trigger enter and on trigger exit doesn't give you the enable or disable, so we can't disable the components. Well, that's kind of pretty stupid, but whatever. So alternatively, we could just do destroy hook, and it's going to destroy the component, not the game object. Okay, you will see that this is going to be removed once we go through the entire line of code, of descriptions actually. So line 2, line 3, line 4, and there we go. Okay, now that's not really ideal. I don't actually like this, that it's how it works, destroying it. So I can't just separate this, to be honest. Okay, so I'm going to remove the camera hook from this, and I'm going to remove the interaction hook from this. So now I can move my collider anywhere I want to, and I can just go and do, and we can just go and do here the, instead of one shot, let's say hook dot game object set active false, and it's going to close it. I don't like destroying these components because I will later want to save any state they were in. So, you know, when we're loading back the game, we wouldn't have any issues. We could just load on the current state we were always were. Okay. And there we go. We don't have anything else, but we still get to keep the camera changes. So that's for the interactions. I think we've covered a lot of what we need for the interactions. And of course, we're going to do a lot more. We can have callbacks for when you are actually finishing on interacting with something. Something else happens. That's very critical for a game like this, obviously. And we can, of course, play other animations. Actually, you know what? Before we finish, let's make sure. Well, there's two things we can do when we're changing this. So let's do onto our handle interactions, or on the lookout interaction, it doesn't matter, I guess. We could just do time scale, set it to 0, and set it back again to 1 here. So if you want the full Resident Evil experience, you can stop time and start it again once we're finished. I don't know if we're going to get the inputs now, however, so I guess we're going to have to see. Yeah, I guess that doesn't work. It did work now. Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, it works. We're just going to move the time to that time scale outside of this, outside of the if statement. That's why it didn't work. Awesome. So yeah, if you want the full experience, I don't. So I'm just going to do a public bool time dot public bool freeze time, and if freeze time scale set it to 0, otherwise if freeze time scale to 1. Obviously it would have been better if we are using a manager or game manager to handle freeze time or not, but for now this can work as well. And however, if we don't want time scale, we can play an animation for this, and to play this animation we can just do a public, actually it doesn't need to be public, bool is init. We can do also public string animation name once this is happening. So if no freeze time, if not is init equals true, then player anim play animation name. You can also say player anim dot set float, and I don't remember the name of the floats, so let's do this. Let's find them from here. Yeah, we do have only the forward, I guess. I see. Yeah, we only have the forward. So look at the direction. Just set this to 0. Okay, and then we need to disable the isInit, and we're going to do this here. Yeah, okay. Okay, so even if we're not freezing at our time, we can still be playing. So that will come in handy if you are actually hitting, if you want the zombies to be able to hit you when, even if you are interacting or something. Okay. And you can see that time is still running. So awesome. Let's leave this over here. You know, as always, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and if you like to see more stuff like this, more videos, then consider supporting me on Patreon so we can keep making a lot more of this and actually make it into a game. I'll see you on the next one.